The dust has settled on week 11 of the college football season. Hurts my heart a little bit to say out loud. They're going to give you their college football playoff rankings on Tuesday after you watch a bunch of college basketball, and it'll be awesome. However, we're going to give you the playoff picture rankings right now. Got to give a quick disclaimer before we jump into it. This is not a bracket kind of ranking. Like, I'm not telling you who gets a bye in the first round of the college football playoff. I'm telling you if these teams were all at large bids, this is how I would rank them. Now, I do understand we have a lot of folks here that are dialed into how that bracket's going to look. So with that being said, I have a Big 12 team outside of my 12 teams I'm going to give you. So we'll speak about that Big 12 team. That would be the auto bid. And then we're also going to mention the team that would be the G5 rep as the 12th seed. So if that's not confusing enough for you, here we go. Make sure you're subscribed. College football, nothing but college football all year round. And it happens right here. So we appreciate you being locked in. Get at me on the socials, Instagram and Twitter, at JD PicKell, to let me know your thoughts on our playoff picture rankings. So, as I mentioned, I do not have a Big 12 team in my top 12. The team that I would have from the Big 12 is BYU. Now, you got to give them credit for being undefeated. I'll be real here. I do not trust them. I would like to trust them. I love the Big 12. Spent a lot of time in Big 12 country. I do not trust anybody in the Big 12 right now. Right now, though, if we are doing a ranking, they're undefeated and it's got to count for something. So BYU is the team from the Big 12 that I would put in the college football playoff if we're going off of just these current rankings right now. So let's let that be clear. The 12th team, though, the G5 rep for us, so we're kind of an auto bid. If you have Boise State as your 12th team in the college football landscape, like the playoff rankings do, then more power to you. Boise State right now, they're going to be the G5 rep, barring something wildly unforeseen. It's funny to say, but the feather in their cap is a 3-point loss to the best team in college football right now at their place in the Oregon Ducks. If you want the belt from Boise State, got to come take it. And I say it every week, but it just continues to amaze me that everybody knows who's getting the football. It's Mike Myers back there and Ashton Genty. And every single week, he still runs for well over 100 yards and is having just an incredible season. We can't speak about that enough, but Boise State, behind Ashton Genty, they are the 12th team for me right now in our college football playoff picture rankings, and they are the G5 rep for us moving forward. Now, at number 11, it's going to ruffle some feathers, but we're here for it. I got Georgia. And here's the thing with me with Georgia. I understand the Ole Miss loss looks bad. I understand that the championship traits of previous Kirby Smart Georgia teams doesn't look to be quite as visible. But are we just going to act like that game at Texas didn't happen? Are we just going to just dismiss the fact that they went into Austin, Texas, and beat that good Texas roster with a good quarterback and good head coach in Steve Sarkisian by 2 scores behind a lackluster showing from Carson Beck? There's still a lot of juice within this roster for Georgia. They can still very much so, I think, go 10-2 and be in the college football playoff. This game against Tennessee is going to tell us a lot. However, for me, I don't think you can find 11 teams better than Georgia this season in college football. So we have them at 11 in our playoff picture rankings. At number 10, a team that beat Georgia in Tuscaloosa and beat the brakes off LSU last night, the Alabama Crimson Tide. This was my takeaway in our reaction from the Alabama win over LSU, but I want to restate it here. Kalen DeBoer is going to be just fine coaching in the SEC. That was a concern for a lot of people, myself included, when he got to Tuscaloosa. Going to Death Valley and beating that team by darn near 30 points should tell us everything we need to know. I'll also say this, when Jalen Milroe is cooking on the ground with his legs, they can beat anybody. So we got him at 10 right now, but you put Alabama out there against Ohio State, against Texas, against Oregon, and promise me Jalen Milroe will have over 100 yards on the ground, I'd be hard-pressed to not take Alabama. In fact, I'll double down on that. I will take Alabama if Jalen Milroe has 100 yards rushing on the day. Now, will he consistently have that? Remains to be seen, but Alabama for us, they've done too much this year, even with the loss to Tennessee and Vandy, for me to leave them outside the top 10 as of right now. At number 9, I got Miami. I'm saying, JD, Miami? They've been just eking past teams. Listen, they only have one loss. That one loss came yesterday against Georgia Tech. I'll say this, I think they needed it. I think Miami is more dangerous because of that loss to Georgia Tech. Miami, if you look at the numbers, one of the best teams in college football, if not the best team in college football, when it comes to how they perform in the second half. They have scored the most points per game in the second half of anyone in college football with 24. They are top 25 in the country in terms of points allowed in the second half with 10 per game. So Miami, what does that tell us when they play at a high level in the second half? In large part, this season, they have had to play well in the second half because they've been behind or had a sense of urgency. That loss against Georgia Tech, I think, now creates urgency for Miami to be at their best the rest of the way. I think they'll win the ACC, have a bye in the first round of the college football playoff. But as of this week, they are number 9 in our playoff picture rankings. Similar situation, I have Notre Dame at 8. And I say similar situation in the sense that Notre Dame, after they lost to NIU, it was like, oh, man, that's it for the Irish. Marcus Freeman and company, man, that's it. Y'all, don't look now. After that loss to NIU, Notre Dame has been rolling. Depending on how you assess a ranked win, Notre Dame, if you freeze the win when they got it, will have more than likely 4 ranked wins if they beat Army, and Army's ranked when they play them, which you would imagine they would be for barring something wildly unforeseen. Notre Dame rolling. They finished the season with 1 loss. They will be in the college football playoff. Give a lot of credit to Marcus Freeman. Give a lot of credit to those leaders in that locker room for being able to reset from catastrophe early on in the year, and they're playing good football right now. Notre Dame at 8. At 7, a team that is shooting up our college football playoff picture rankings, Ole Miss. Yeah, they got 2 losses. They're both by 3 points. So if you want to just die on the hill that you lost 2 games, you shouldn't be this high in the conversation, well then, we're just going to have a back and forth here. But I think if you're talking about actually playing the sport and assessing what they did on that field, the loss to Kentucky, yeah, it's bad. Teams have bad games in college football. Doesn't mean they're not good? No. They lost to LSU at night by 3 points in overtime. The chops of this Ole Miss team are real deal, I believe, and I think they can be right there in the mix when it comes to making a college football playoff run. I'll also say this. Whatever you thought about Georgia going into yesterday, I think you now have to, in some way, shape, or form, flip the script and think that about Ole Miss when it comes to how they're built as a roster. Because going in, I'll say this, I picked Georgia to beat Ole Miss. Why? Because I trusted the quarterback, I trusted the line of scrimmage. Both of those variables favored in a massive way Ole Miss yesterday. Jackson Dart was the tone setter. What they did up front with Walter Nolan and Princely Umanmielen sacking Carson Beck 5 times, that's a real deal team out there in Oxford, trending at the right time. I believe they will be a college football playoff team at 10-2, and I believe they're going to be a tough out when they get there. They're number 7 in our playoff picture rankings this week. At number 6, I got Penn State. Now, Penn State, I don't know how their roster will stack up with some of these other teams in the SEC because the Ohio State loss is tough to get out of my mind. But I will say I think Penn State is talented enough to be competitive with those other teams that they're going to have to play to make a run in the college football playoff. More importantly, I think they're going to be better for the loss against Ohio State because they left that game against Ohio State with bullets in the chamber. They were not creative enough. They were not aggressive enough. They did not get the ball to their playmakers enough, and they lost the game because of it. They are not good enough to straight up beat an Ohio State or straight up beat fill in whatever power you want next, Texas, Oregon, whatever. But if they get creative enough, and if Drew Aller is on at the right time, Penn State's going to have a problem, or going to be a problem, rather. Give someone else the problem. But again, touchdown loss to the number 2 team in college football. Spoiler alert for us there. Penn State at number 6 this week in our playoff picture rankings. Number 5, undaunted, Indiana, Kurt Cignetti, blades and fists, baby. They're rolling right now. I think you maybe squint a little bit or raise your eyebrows a little bit at the game against Michigan yesterday because Michigan, I don't know if they're a great football team. They're a talented football team, but it's not one that was a dominant win like we've seen Indiana have to this point in the season against pretty much everybody. Going into yesterday's game, they had beat everybody by over 14 points. Yesterday against Michigan, it's a 1-score game, a little bit close. Michigan, again, I don't really think they're all that Michigan-ish this year, just to call a spade a spade. I'm a little bit worried about Indiana going forward. When they play better competition, we'll see how they look against Ohio State here in a couple of weeks. But all that's to say, they're undefeated. It's tough to argue with undefeated. They're number 5 this week. And for all y'all that are in BYU country saying, well, hey, it's tough to argue with undefeated. Tough to argue with undefeated and definitively and decisively undefeated like Indiana has been outside of yesterday's game. So BYU, I hear you. Just your time will come. But Indiana at 5 for us this week. Number 4, I got Tennessee. The conversation all year long has been Nico Iamaleava this. Can he do this? Can he do that? Regardless of what Nico Iamaleava does, they got a really freaking good defense. Coming into yesterday, they were the number 1 team in America when it comes to yards per carry allowed. They got a real deal force up front in the trenches to the Tennessee Volunteers. And speaking of the offense, they run the ball at a really high level. They're averaging 5 yards a carry. 62% of the time they're running the football. Dylan Sampson is a dude. I think he deserves more love when it comes to that Heisman discussion. Going to learn a lot about the Vols when they go to Athens next week. But Tennessee, trust the defense, trust the run game. When the quarterback gets there, they're going to be a major problem. But right now, it's tough for me to put 4 teams ahead of Tennessee in this discussion for the college football playoff. At number 3, I got Texas. Still elite roster. Still, I believe, an elite quarterback. Still an elite head coach. Don't look too deeply at the Vandy game. Don't look too deeply at the loss to Georgia. I mean, assess those. Take it for what they are. But, let's not just act like Texas isn't still one of the best teams in college football. I think the game against Florida, say what you want about Florida offensively. For Quinn Ewers to go for 5 touchdowns yesterday, I believe he had 4 of those in the first half. Texas is going to be just fine. I think they'll trend at the right time, and I cannot wait for that game against A&M here at the regular season finale. But Texas at number 3 for us this week. Number 2, I got Ohio State. I'll go back to this, man. Will Howard's not the problem. If I told you Will Howard would be good enough to win a national championship at this point in the year, preseason, if you're an Ohio State fan, you'd probably start cashing your futures. Say, great, national title, check, Big Ten title, check. Now, the loss against Oregon, people are going to be quick to say, well, Will Howard did this, he did that. He played well enough in that game to win that football game. It was your defense that allowed over 300 yards through the air that gave you issues, all right? Will Howard, the way he has played at this point in the year, I think is going to be good enough, even with the Penn State showing that wasn't all that great, and he would tell you that Ohio State and what they are overall, they are going to be, I believe, right there in there at the end. And Ohio State has given me no reason to believe they are in any way, shape, or form fraudulent. They got a 1-point loss on their resume at the number 1 team in America against Oregon. If we want to get riled up about that, we totally can. But Ohio State, they're really good. They're number 2 for us in our playoff picture rankings. Rounding it out, no surprise to anybody, the Oregon Ducks at number 1. They are the most playoff-ready team right now. Notice the way I said that. They are the most playoff-ready team. You could start the playoff tomorrow, and I think Oregon would be the team that I would probably pick to win the whole darn thing. Not just because of what's on their resume, because of how they're playing. Dylan Gabriel went from conversational to fluent in the offense. You're seeing that reflected in the numbers with the offensive line. You're seeing different skill players in the perimeter start to surge. You're seeing the defense play at a high level. You're seeing no competitive letdown from them, whether they beat Ohio State, whether they got to go to Purdue, whether they're playing Maryland. It doesn't matter. Oregon undefeated, and the way they are throttling teams and the overall competitive temperature of that team set by Dan Lanning, they're going to be a force. They would be ready for the college football playoff if it started tomorrow, and that is, I think, a dangerous thing for the rest of college football. Don't want to peak too early, but Oregon, number 1 in America right now for us, and I think for everybody that watches this sport. So to recap it here, for those of y'all that are going to get bent out of shape about the Big 12 not being in this top 12 where, hey, it doesn't know how the format works, this guy doesn't know how the new college football playoff works, the Big 12 rep, as of right now, I think you have to tip your hat to BYU. Undefeated, and that counts for something. At number 12, our G5 rep is Boise State. They have the belt in the G5. If you want it, you got to come take it, or hope and pray they somehow drop it. Georgia at number 11. Yesterday was not pretty. I don't see that same championship juice that I thought we would see from them this year, 100%. However, the win over Texas and just the way they've looked at times this year, I think you got to put them in the top 12, and we do. At number 10, I got Alabama. When they're on with Jalen Milroe, they are on, and they are a force. They can play with anybody. Miami at number 9. I'm telling you, that loss going to benefit them. Same way it benefited Notre Dame at number 8. Ole Miss at 7. Penn State at 6. Indiana undefeated at 5. Tennessee at 4. Big one against Georgia next week. Keep an eye on that. Texas at 3. Ohio State at 2. And the Oregon Ducks at number 1 in our college football playoff picture rankings coming out of week 11 of the college football season. So again, make sure you're subscribed. If you're listening on podcast, this is probably the end of our Sunday Sprint podcast for you. If you want to listen to all of our reactions to what happened in Week 11, that podcast is available on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us there. Type in the Hard Count with JD PicKell. We'll be there for you. All right, so with that being said, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Make sure you're locked in for the rest of the college football season by being subscribed here. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see you.